2005 Chrysler Town & Country Touring stow and go package. Sometimes it'll work just fine like that, other times it doesn't. Symptoms of a faulty wiring harness. You should disconnect the negative battery terminal because some of those wires are live all the time. For this project, there's no reason to remove the door trim panel. These types of door problems where it'll partially close and then come back open are almost always related to this wiring track or harness in here. And what happens is one of these wires inside of that harness will eventually break. Sometimes it'll make contact, sometimes it won't. When it gets bad enough, it probably never will, but a lot of times you'll get some random kind of errors. Sometimes it'll close, sometimes it won't. We're going to have to get this cover off. We're going to have to take this lower trim piece off, and then eventually we're going to have to pry this trim loose here on this pillar. There's a seam or a joint right here, but that connection is basically right in, and here's one of the connections. So you can just grab this trim piece, get your fingers under there, and just start to come along and pull up on it. And eventually, that'll pop out of there. Get that up and out of the way. You can kind of see what you're dealing with there that's holding that bottom trim piece on. Once that trim piece is gone from the bottom here, you'll be able to get back in behind this piece, and you'll be able to get in behind here and pry this column piece loose. You don't have to take it completely off, you just need to get it loose. You're going to want to get this passenger seat pushed all the way forward to give you a little extra room right in here. Now that passenger seat is forward, and you've got quite a bit of room now for this column trim to pop off. Actually, just bend this column piece out. You can kind of see where the cable comes up. Goes in behind here. And it's actually that fitting right there. You can just push that little tab down. You need two hands, of course, and you need to push down and pull, and that should just pull right out of there. You need to take this plastic cover off. There's two screws, one here, one kind of down inside here. Remove those and pop that cover off. For some reason it seems like you kind of have to take this front screw out before this cover will lift up and out of there. Set that aside and make sure you don't lose the screws to that. With that cover off, now you can see how that wiring harness, how the wire comes up through here. I want to take note of how that routes through here, and then it goes on back, and actually there's the connector right back in there. If you move the door up slightly, here's fully back. If you move it up slightly, you can see that connection right there. I'm going to pry that gray handle down here on the side closest to me, then push it down, and that gray thing will pop down about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. Then push in that tab and separate that connector. This rear connector that's attached to the sliding door, there's this little gray lever. You need to kind of pry down on it while you're kind of pulling on this side. And I guess it doesn't matter. Ripped it completely out of there, that's alright. If I had two hands I could have probably done it. Pull down on the one side, kind of pull, and it'll back down there about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. Then push in here and pull. I'm going to have two hands, but push that in, wiggle this connector out. At this rear connection point, there is an attachment in here. You're going to want to pry that out. That'll give you some wiggle room to remove that connector. This track is held on to this pin. There's this little locking clip. Pull that all the way, get a little screwdriver in there, pry that all the way back. Once that's pried all the way back, this track will push down and off of that pin. The factory track will come with these factory mounted. When I bought this kit, they kind of come on a little wire tie and you have to put them where you need them. There's basically one of them up here towards the front holding this track in. On the factory track there's this connector right here that basically looks like it could slide into that piece down there. On my new one that I got, looks like some little tab is broke off. I got that, of course, from the Amazon returns, so I'm not too worried about it. We'll just have to rig up something to kind of hold this in place right in that area. I think I can rig something together to hold that back end in place down in here. My factory unit has a little hook right here that slips over some of the metal of the door. My Dorman unit doesn't have that. Dorman on the bottom, factory on the top. Here's that little hook I'm talking about. It's not there. Looks like I might be able to unwrap that tape, grab it, tape it back onto here if I wanted. Went ahead and peeled the tape off of this plastic piece that kind of guides the wires around the corner and has that hook on it. Again, my Dorman unit doesn't have that. I peeled the tape off, thought maybe I could transfer this over, but you see here we got, bare wires going through here. It's pretty limited space in there. And this has got that corrugated, so that's not going to fit in there. So without some heavy modification, that's not going to work. So I guess we'll just go without it, and if we have to, whatever, we'll put a wrap of tape here. Again, difference between factory and Dorman, so it's up to you whether you want to spend the extra 30-40 bucks, get the factory unit. I've replaced this one time before with a factory unit, probably about 3 to 4 years ago. So we get about Seems to be about 4 years or so out of each one of these, and then they tend to start failing. Pry this little piece out of there, expose those 2 holes. Now we'll just take one of those wire tie device type things and attach it somewhere kind of in this area. Actually, instead of using this wire tie / holder that came with it, I'm going to take a regular wire tie. I bent it and hooked it through there, and we'll use that to hold the back end of this down. So there, wire tie in the back, we'll cinch that up eventually. And then up here we've got that one that goes into this hole up here. Got that front connector back in, tucked in all around here. This isn't as great as I would like. It's forcing that track a little bit towards the inside of the vehicle instead of that connector being right underneath it, but should be okay. We'll see how it rolls up once we get going here. Back here we may put something in here, wrap a tape or something to kind of hold that, since we don't have that little holder there anymore. And then we'll connect this back connector. We'll give it a test run. We'll do 1 wrap of electrical tape there to kind of hold that in place. Looks like it'd probably be okay. Alright, before we get everything buttoned up, we're going to give it a test. Don't be surprised if, like the first time, it doesn't work. It might have to do some relearning, but let's see what we got. Well, how about that? All right. Looks like a fix. Since I don't have that right underneath the track, it's in there a little bit crooked, but I don't think it's going to hurt anything. One thing you want to make sure right in here, get this tucked in down inside underneath there so it doesn't, that casing doesn't rub on that gear. And then we'll button it up by putting that trim piece back on there, the bottom trim, pop that back in, we're done. You can kind of see how this column trim fits in that connector right there, just pushes in. Okay, miss, go ahead and close the door. And it works perfectly.